By now, we've all heard of the mysterious section of the Atlantic Ocean dubbed the Bermuda Triangle, where dozens of ships and airplanes alike have disappeared under unusual circumstances. Pilots have known to become disoriented, leading them to disappear into the night, and ships have gone missing without even radioing any distress messages. But the Bermuda Triangle is not the only place in our oceans where these incidents have taken place. This is the Dragon's Triangle, otherwise known as the Devil's Sea. It is located just off the south coast of Tokyo, Japan, of which the locals know it by Ma no Umi, which translates to the Evil Sea. It is known as such for good reason. Many ships, both of recent and old, that have entered the area have never reached their destination, nor have they returned. Thousands of years ago, the Japanese countrymen believed that the area was inhabited by dragons who lived beneath the surface of the water, and they didn't dare venture into it as a result, fearing that what lies beneath would take them. Chinese folklore also seems to state that a huge dragon built its palace underneath the waves in the area. According to biologist and writer Ivan Terence Sanderson, the Devil's Sea, along with the Bermuda Triangle, are two of the 12 areas on Earth known as vile vortices. Ivan first coined the term after researching these areas and cataloguing the many unexplained disappearances and other unusual phenomena in the areas. Many claim that these vile vortices locations seem to be the home of naturally occurring anomalies due to the planet's natural electromagnetic fields being stronger in these areas than most other places in the world. Now, it's all well and good making vague claims like that, but is there any evidence to support it? Firstly, according to the World Health Organization, electromagnetic fields are present everywhere in our environment but are invisible to the human eye. Electric fields are produced by the local buildup of electric charges in the atmosphere associated with thunderstorms. The Earth's magnetic field causes a compass needle to orient in a north-south direction and is used by birds and fish for navigation. Those who claim that the Earth's electromagnetic fields are somehow different in these areas often point to Flight 19, which disappeared without a trace in the Bermuda Triangle. Flight 19 was a group of 5 US aircraft that were flying a training exercise in the area in 1945. At some point during their flight over the triangle, they began to experience electrical malfunctions and their compasses failed. This resulted in the entirety of the group getting lost and disappearing, and they were never located. It's unclear if all compasses failed or just the leaders, but none of them came home, which could indicate that it was all compasses present. This means, according to researchers, that there are two possibilities. Either there was something internally wrong with all the compasses present, or something else, externally, was interfering with them. But of course, nobody really knows. Now, there are some noteworthy events that have taken place in the Devil's Sea. For instance, the grandson of Genghis Khan, Kublai Khan, the 5th great Khan of the Mongol Empire, wanted to make inroads into Japan in 1281 AD. However, this invasion would never make it to Japan's shores and instead would go missing somewhere in the Devil's Sea. 900 ships carrying 40,000 soldiers disappeared in the triangle, and it wasn't entirely clear why. Some believe that the area is home to some sort of negative force, while others theorize that typhoons are to blame. The Japanese at the time believed that the gods had interfered and saved them from their enemies. In the 1800s, those on board Japanese vessels repeatedly reported seeing a lady sailing a ship in the Devil's Sea. They said that the ship resembled a traditional Japanese vessel used for burning incense. However, each time it was spotted, it always seemed to evade the Japanese sailors, and its origin was never determined. Later, in more recent times, between the 1940s and 50s, would see a number of fishing vessels and over 5 military ships disappear in the triangle. The scenario was similar each time this happened. All contact was lost and officials had no idea what had taken place. In late September of 1953, a Japanese research vessel named the Ko Maru with its 31 crew members was sent to the Moigin Reef area. This was to investigate the prior disappearances and to monitor strange underwater activity that had been previously observed. However, the ship nor the crew would make it to the reef, and they seemed to have followed in the footsteps of their predecessors and disappeared too. Many attempts at contacting the Ko Maru were made, and after 3 days of radio silence, the vessel was reported missing. The Japanese government ordered ships to change course in the area, and the search and rescue operation was on. Unlike the prior vessels that had disappeared in the area, searchers did find some wreckage that they believed to belong to the Ko Maru, but none of them bore the ship's name, and none of the crew were ever found, and where exactly they ended up remains a mystery. Japanese authorities concluded that an underwater volcano must have exploded far beneath the waves just as the ship reached the area. They said that the water must have become too hot, leading to a loss of buoyancy, therefore sinking the Ko Maru. The Japanese government at the time were reported to have recognised the area and to have declared it as dangerous for marine voyaging and for transporting goods. As a result, all research efforts in the area were called off. Now, as said, some people talk about the vile vortices and how the concept applies to both the Bermuda Triangle and the Devil's Sea. But one question I've seen posed a lot is, are the two triangles interrelated? It's difficult to answer that question as the two triangular locations are not officially recognised on any world map, so the precise size of each area is difficult to ascertain and compare as it varies depending on the author. The Dragon's Triangle and the Bermuda Triangle do seem to lie exactly opposite one another in the world on the same lines of latitude, though I'm not sure what conclusions could be drawn from that fact. However, some point to the strange disappearances in both of these areas and state that the occurrences are significant enough to suspect some kind of interrelationship between the pair. There was one unusual report by Japanese pilot Toshiaki Lang defending against US forces in 1944. Toshiaki claimed that whilst flying over the Devil's Sea during an aerial battle, he saw something massive beneath the surface of the water. He said that it appeared to have two huge triangular wings that he thought it was using to navigate through the waters. He estimated that it must have been around 150 feet long, though of course this sighting cannot be confirmed. But Toshiaki maintained that it was true for the rest of his life. Now let's have a look at some of the disappearances that have taken place over the area. On the 22nd of March 1957, a USAF C-97 Stratofreighter disappeared after departing from Wake Island travelling to Tokyo International Airport. These aircraft were manufactured by Boeing towards the end of World War II, and they were designed for long-range flights to deliver heavy military cargo. On board this particular flight were 67 military personnel, and this is a journey that would usually take 9.5 hours, but the plane was filled with enough fuel for 13 hours. Now, either the sources I used have either mistaken their time slightly, the plane was going slower than usual, or the flight to Tokyo was not the only part of the mission because the times do not add up. 8 hours into the flight, at approximately 1 PM, the pilot radioed Japanese air control and told them that the flight was going smoothly and that the weather conditions were almost perfect for flying. An hour and a half afterwards, at 2:30 PM, which is 9.5 hours into the flight now, the pilot engaged again with air traffic controllers, and together they estimated that they would arrive at 5 PM. The pilot also reported that all equipment was in working order and was functioning without issue. The pilot would check in one final time at 3:45 PM, and he told air traffic control that they were 200 miles from Tokyo, and air control expected their arrival within 2 hours. But this aircraft and all on board would never arrive at their destination. The Japanese authorities grew worried and quickly mounted a search and rescue mission after the American crew failed to arrive within their estimated time frame. Japanese planes combed through thousands of square miles of ocean attempting to retrace the route, but they found nothing. Ships were deployed in the area the plane was thought to have vanished, but they also never found anything. Searchers at the time said that they had no idea what happened and that there wasn't any kind of distress messages sent before the disappearance. They said that according to the pilot, everything was going fine 1 minute and then suddenly they were gone the next. Over 60 years have passed and the whereabouts of the aircraft or the crew have never been found. This was the worst loss involving the C-97, and it's reported that this event made some members of the US Air Force uneasy when travelling over this area, because they were never able to fully understand what took place. As an interesting side note, some US Air Force personnel have reported witnessing things out of the ordinary taking place on aircraft in that area. One crew member said that he and others have seen seatbelts coming undone by themselves and hatches opening and closing on their own accord. Pilots have stated that sometimes they pick something up that doesn't get properly recorded by onboard systems. The pilot cited one instance where he and the rest of the crew present heard a loud, unusual sound but couldn't identify which direction it was coming from. He said that the systems didn't record it and weren't able to play it back. On the 11th of July 1980, the ship known as the Derbyshire embarked from Seven Islands, Quebec, Canada, travelling to Kawasaki, Japan. On September the 9th, 1980, this ship, that was twice the size of the Titanic and over 3 football fields in length, state of the art for the time, disappeared whilst in the Devil's Sea just over 200 miles from Okinawa, Japan. The Derbyshire was almost brand new. It was a 4-year-old bulk carrier transporting 150,000 tons of iron ore at the time of her disappearance. It was the largest British ship to have ever been lost at sea, and similar to the Titanic, there was an air about the ship being unsinkable. On the day of her disappearance, the captain contacted the Japanese at 10:19 AM and told them that they were fighting 70-mile-per-hour winds and 30-foot waves. It was reported that the captain was calm and not worried, stating that he was confident that his massive ship would have no trouble. He radioed once more not long afterwards, estimating that they would be delayed, but by no more than a few days, but they never arrived and seemed to have disappeared without a trace. What was interesting about this was that the ship made no distress call before vanishing, despite their communication systems working perfectly. At the time, they were in the heart of the annual typhoon season, but the vessel had been following the weather routing advice from the commercial weather routing company, Ocean Routes, and this was thought to be the safest route. When the Derbyshire, along with her crew, failed to arrive at the harbour, the Japanese authorities commenced the search efforts on the 15th of September, 6 days after their final communication. This search lasted for 6 days, but no trace of the ship was found. One lifeboat was spotted in the area by a Japanese tanker, which was later theorised as belonging to the Derbyshire, but it's unclear if the lifeboat was ever recovered. Other than this isolated sighting, no further reports were made, and the search would end unsuccessfully. The case was initially closed, citing forces of nature, and most believed that it would never be found. However, the Derbyshire would be discovered 14 years later. The families of the crew were not willing to let their loved ones go silently into the night without an extensive investigation, and their demands were eventually met. In July of 1994, an expedition team led by David Mearns of Oceaneering Technologies headed into the Devil's Sea. Despite the area being absolutely enormous, they believed that with the state-of-the-art technology at the time, the ship, if it was there, could be found. They used what is known as a sonar towfish, which is a device that is essentially lowered to the ocean floor and dragged behind the ship whilst it takes pictures of its surroundings. The towfish spotted something hard and heavy on the ocean floor, but the team initially weren't sure if it was just a rock or if it was a wreckage. But after some analysis, they realised that what they were looking at was the ship along with the entirety of its iron ore contents. The crew nor their remains were located, and the team theorised that the ship must have been sunk as a result of the typhoons in the area at the time, since the captain reported fighting the extreme weather conditions. Some experts did question the findings, however, stating that while the typhoon played an important role in the disappearance, they believed it unconvincing that the present weather alone could have caused it. They also note that the fact that no distress messages were sent may signal that something sudden may also have taken place alongside the typhoon. Some suggest that strong forces could lurk beneath the waters that modern science is still struggling to understand. Others state that given that the Japanese authorities believed that the Ko Maru had encountered volcanic activity all those years prior, something of that nature could also be true for the Derbyshire. But the camps are split here. Many believe that the typhoon alone is enough to explain the disappearance, while others state that the typhoon theory just doesn't account for everything. The Japanese Marine Science Technology Center regularly sends submarine craft down into the dark depths of the area. What's interesting about this is that they state that in some areas of the Devil's Sea there are rifts that tear down 37,000 feet deep into the ocean floor. This is so deep that even if you place Mount Everest in that area, the summit would still be a mile beneath the surface of the water. Some state that other than volcanic activity, there might be some natural phenomena occurring down there that science is yet to explain, which may have been a factor in the disappearances. There are other unusual accounts here too. Some believe that there is some sort of intelligence that dwells beneath the Devil's Sea. There was one account from a Russian scientist that stands out the most. The Soviets at the time were conducting their own secretive research in the area, and on the 18th of August 1980, the Soviet vessel named the Vladimir Voliborov returned to Russia. Upon arrival, the expedition leader, Professor Platinov, claimed that whilst he was on watch, a cylindrical object burst from the sea and circled their ship for several minutes. He said that the vessel was engulfed in a bright blue light, but after a few minutes, whatever it was plunged back into the ocean. Professor Platinov continued and said that he'd never witnessed anything like that before or afterwards. Some Japanese scientists did hear about this incident, and they said that while they could not explain the circulating behaviour or the light emitted, there is a phenomenon that may explain an object bursting from that part of the ocean. They state that extremely powerful eruptions do take place in the depths there, so powerful that they could thrust matter up and above the surface without leaving any evidence behind. They said that this could explain why the object was there and then suddenly left. Of course, this would assume that Professor Platinov was either not telling the complete truth or perhaps embellished his tale somewhat. There was another noteworthy disappearance that took place too in January of 2002 when the MV Linjay failed to arrive at the Japanese port of Kagoshima. Unfortunately, there is far less information on the disappearance itself and the search afterwards, as the Chinese government is known to be secretive. But from what information is available, before disappearing, there was no distress call sent, which mirrors other disappearances in the area. The search began and it lasted some time, but even months afterwards, the authorities stated that they had no idea what happened to the Linjay. To conclude, there were some other suggestions as to what may be happening in the area. One idea was that apart from the typhoons, perhaps other sea events such as tidal waves resulting from the earthquakes below may have been able to take the ships by surprise. But this was disputed by experts who said that it is incredibly unlikely, since when in the open ocean, even big, destructive tsunamis might only be a metre or less in height and at that point would go largely unnoticed. There were some other controversial ideas too. For instance, author and professor Junchi Yayo said that he believes that there may be some sort of phenomenon taking place in the area that opens up a passageway into another dimension. He said that when we watch TV or listen to the radio, we cannot see, hear or interact with the radio waves that provide us with the service. And perhaps other dimensions also exist around us and work in a similar manner, in that they cannot be seen or interacted with unless specific conditions are met which allow passage through. But all in all, while some suggestions may hold more weight than others, there doesn't seem to be a definitive answer to the puzzle that everyone can agree on. These were just some of the disappearances that have occurred across our oceans, and there are far more that remain unexplained. If you'd like me to cover ship disappearances again, perhaps from all around the world, then do let me know, and do share your thoughts on this one. Please do leave a like if you liked the video, or a dislike if you didn't. Feel free to share your honest opinion, I'd like to hear your thoughts. And I'd just like to take a moment to thank all of you that have subscribed to the channel and who share these videos. I appreciate it a lot and I can't thank you enough. I'd also like to say a massive thank you to my patrons. Your support is massively appreciated, so thank you very much to those who have signed up. Anyway, do let me know what you thought of this one, and you'll find all of the links and sources in the description below. As always, thank you very much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you did, remember to like and subscribe if you haven't already, it helps me a lot. I hope that you have a great day, or evening depending on where you are. Be safe guys, and I'll catch you soon. Peace.